you never know. Is this person had a psychiatric issue and got on the street and lost everything because of this?
Yes.
Or is it just a reaction? Because I would also be depressive, and I would also suffer from insomnia and depression and whatever, and panic and fear if I would have been, thrown out of my apartment.
Hi, this is your project management cowboy coming right back at you with our next podcast number 8. It's a privilege that we've gotten to number 8. And the second big privilege that we have today is that we finally, after having tried to get a number of you ladies who work as project managers out there, we finally managed to get a lady as a guest. Our guest today is Dr. Monika Stark. She'll introduce herself in just a little bit. There's a number of different things I want to kind of start off with before we get into the topic. One, let's talk about the topic. One of the missions of this podcast is to provide you as a community the opportunity to have an insight into different fields of industry. The field of industry that we're looking at today is very, very interesting. Number one, it kind of has a medical background, which is interesting. Okay. And the second part is it's nonprofit or in the charitable area. Would that be correct? Okay. What we're going to be talking to you about today is about an initiative that has started in Austria. And I really look forward to this topic. We're going to be talking about a program which is called Med4Hope. What is Med4Hope?
So Med4Hope stands for Medical Aid for Homeless People. And it's an initiative that focuses on education of doctors, paramedics, social workers, whoever has to do with street medicine issues. Because we discovered that this education is very important. A lot of people do street medicine, and there's very little education in this field.
Okay, so let's maybe put it into a storyline because I think it makes it a little bit easier for people to understand. What's your background?
My background, I'm a medical doctor.
Okay.
And
You're a general practitioner.
Yeah.
You have your own practice, very large and well.
Yeah, I have my own practice. I worked a long time in emergency medicine.
So that's an important point, right? Because emergency medicine is also kind of a...
Street medicine.
It's kind of a precursor to the initiative that you have for Med4Hope, right?
Yeah, it was. It is actually. But I didn't work in hospital. I worked on the street with the paramedics.
So let's maybe expand a little bit on this so that we can create a point of reference for Med4Hope, right? It used to be when people worked for emergency services, you would have different doctors going out there handling people that had different emergencies. Yeah. But there was no standard. There is, of course, a standard. Now there is, but it used to be there was not one, right?
Yeah, that's right. When I started, I had to do an education in this field. But when I was born, for example, my dad was also a paramedic, and he told me that it was a great honor to have a doctor in this, so that everybody could go out on the street with the paramedics in the car, in the emergency car, and treat people, also orthopedic doctors, psychiatrists, whatever. And later on, they had this special education for emergency medicine, which now is standard. Nobody could go out there without this special education, as in... there is also in every kind of medicine, geriatric medicine, and there are special fields. And I think the street medicine is also a very special field because you have people who are not, like you used to have in your normal doctor's office. They have special conditions and special possibilities, and they have trust issues.
We'll get into the details, but what I kind of want to also do for the participants who are looking at this, who might not have a medical background, who might be from a different industry, that might say, well, what relevance might this have for me? What we're kind of talking about here, although we're using this as a specific example, is what does it mean to do something that is important, where you do it with a good intent, but without a standard? Right?
Yeah.
So it used to be that in emergency medicine, Any doctor could go out there and treat people, but there's no standard. There were no standard operating procedures, and that had a huge detriment to the quality of service that you had for people that had emergency issues.
Yeah.
And what Med4Hope is addressed as a key mission, right, was that they said, well, people that are homeless or people that live on the street, right, have certain medical conditions that require a specific treatment, which is not covered under the common understanding of medical practice.
Exactly.
Okay. So the primary the primary thing that kind of brought this thing into fruition or into your mind, you, next to being a general practitioner, have for many years already
worked in this field.
In street medicine.
Yeah,
right?
I studied in street medicine in 2002. So it's over 20 years ago, and I do this regularly each week.
Tell us a little bit about where you do this.
I do this in Vienna.
Okay.
Vienna, Austria.
Yeah.
And
what's the name of the organization that you work
for? It's the Austrian Caritas.
Yeah.
And we started like 30 years ago to we have a special tour with a bus, which is equipped in a medical office. And we went to all the places where the homeless people used to stay.
It's a mobile unit.
Yeah, it's a mobile unit.
It's basically like an ambulance.
Yes.
Okay.
It's more like a doctor's office.
Okay.
We don't have
where you acknowledge the fact that your potential clients might not have the possibility of going to a hospital or to a stationary place. There's also stationary places in Vienna. But what you do is you acknowledge the fact that one of the conditions of being homeless is that you might be stationary but not anywhere close to a medical institution. So you actually actively go out to your homeless clients. Okay.
Yeah, we do.
And this is called Luisibus, right?
Luisibus, and I did this for over 20 years, and I did a lot of mistakes, and now I actually it hurt me to see that all the other people, they do this exactly the same mistakes that I did, and I think it's not necessary to do this. You know?
You're already a step ahead. I want to actually take time to really listen to your lessons learned. So when you started, I'm assuming you were a young, motivated, highly educated doctor, right?
Yeah, and I needed the money.
Yeah, you needed the money, right?
No, there was no money in it.
There was no money in it, but you did it out of a certain idealism, right? And you probably did it under the professional understanding, hey, listen, I'm a trained medical practitioner. I know what I'm doing. Yeah. Right?
But that was a mistake.
Yes. So
that was the first mistake.
Give us examples where for the first time you maybe after a shift said, hey, listen, something about my training is inadequate for the situation I'm in.
Oh my gosh, there are a lot of, for example, that usually people who come to my regular doctor's office or to the hospital, they show their problems, they show everything and more because they want to that you see all of it. And homeless people, they are ashamed of their whole being, actually. And when they come to you, very often they show you one spot that got hurt, for example.
But maybe not the most important thing.
Yeah, but you just look at that spot. And then because you are in a hurry, there are a lot of other guys who needed to be treated. And you just look at the spot and you just put some disinfectant or whatever, bandage over it. And then comes the next one. But you have to look at the whole person, because very often it turns out that there is another spot and another spot and another wound and a lot of wounds which are a symbol or which show that they have a general infection which needs antibiotic
So this
treatment.
Might just be just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And you just treat this because the person is ashamed to get undressed because they are not that dirty, or I think this shame is very, very big part of the homeless issue.
So you're basically saying, this is also interesting that you're saying that, and this pertains to any form of management out there. There's maybe tools and practices that you use to solve certain problems, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is taking a holistic look at things and involving the human being.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is one of the things you learned, which is much stronger on the street than you in your general practice, is the psychological aspect, the empathy, the understanding, the ability to engage somebody into conversation, which we often don't have time in. You don't have time for that in a general practice, right?
You don't take this time actually. Yeah. So it's like my dog is just lying there, and he had the best life a dog could have, and I used to compare the street medicine with the regular medicine. You have a street dog, and I once tried to catch a street dog in Egypt because I wanted to rescue it, him, she, he, wherever, whatever, and her, and I couldn't get close to her because she was so afraid, and she had such a lot of bad experiences and stories in her life. And so I couldn't manage that she took my help. She could accept my help. And this is the same with people who are living on the street, because the experience they usually have is that doctors or paramedics, they come and they help, but it's not, they very often...
They're used to a different pattern.
Yeah.
And the pattern is that they deal with clients that also are in this framework is, I have to be time efficient. I want to state the problem. I don't want the emotions don't play such a big role. Yeah. I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that. You said that actually the biggest factor that plays a role in what you do is the psychological factor.
Yeah, creating trust. Yeah. Creating trust.
So when you start, let me ask you a question. You've been doing it for 20 years, right? If you were to review the last 20 years of your being exposed to different clients and patients and on the street, what was kind of your evolution? How did you progress in your learning curve?
I progressed through my patients, actually.
Yeah. So you learn,
my clients.
Just like project managers learn from every project if they're not formally trained, right? It's kind of this autodidactic thing. Yeah. So you had a basis of medical understanding, but it was kind of learning by doing?
Yeah, learning by doing and learning by feedback.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important. For learning and feedback from your clients.
Yeah.
I guess seeing them on a reoccurring basis helped too?
Yeah, of course. But it was also the good feedback, actually, when you just go there and they just, they want to give you something back because they're so grateful for the help. And then first I had problems to accept these little gifts. Yeah. It was some flowers from the
or coffee
park or whatever.
A cup of coffee or something.
They want to
show their appreciation.
Yeah, and then maybe this was a good job. And on the other hand, sometimes they did not come back, and so maybe I should have done better. I could have done better.
How did you, now since Lucy Bus is not just you as a person, Lucy Bus is an initiative where...
From the Caritas.
Yeah, from Caritas, with a Catholic organization that does charitable work.
Yeah.
It's not the only organization. There's also
we do
Amber Med and a number of other different organizations. And I want to mention this offhandedly because I think almost every city that we've ever reviewed.
And that's the point why we founded Med4Hope, actually.
You're going to get ahead. We want to do this step by step. We need to give the listeners enough leadway to kind of lead into the story. So you did this for 20 years. You were not the only one that did this. So there was a bunch of different doctors. Did the doctors in Louise Busch do knowledge sharing?
Yeah, of course. We met and we talked over some special problems, but it was not, it was just let's meet once in a while.
So it's informal?
Yeah, it was.
Did it change? And I'm going to use a fancy word. Did it change something in the system itself?
No.
It didn't.
No.
So. The quality of your group was still very much based on individuals.
Yes.
But individuals still chose to do it any which way.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that's a real general problem because I work for several. I also work for the Amber Med4Hope for another place. And, if you go there, they tell you, okay, the antibiotics is there, the prescription papers are here, and the stamp is there, and here you got the tests and whatever you need. But that's the the way how you get instructed. It's not very
So you're talking about a universal issue that you will find in almost any discipline, and that is the issue, what are we trying to do? How do we do it? Is there a uniform common practice which is based on experience? And not just on how motivated an individual is, how capable an individual is, how empathetic an individual is, or how many years of experience. Because there was probably a huge difference between somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and somebody who's been just doing it for 2 years, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, but as you mentioned emergency medicine, I think this is really an excellent example for really, we have guidelines there, and you have to have these guidelines, for example, in reanimation. Every child all over the world knows how to do reanimation normally, like very
CPR.
CPR.
Yeah.
And the doctors know how to do advanced CPR.
Yeah, how do you do it if you're doing CPR on, for example, who's just had a trauma to the chest from a car accident?
You have exact how much of what do you have to give in what situation.
So CPR, let's use this as an example. CPR is something that's pretty straightforward. If you have to do it to somebody who falls over in a restaurant, that's the context, right? The environment that you're doing it. But if you're talking about, for example, coming to a car accident, you have other conditions which have a vital role on whether or not you can do compression on the chest, or how you do the breathing aspect.
But emergency medicine did really a great job.
So let's use this. Use this as an example, because I remember when, and I'm also a member of Med4Hope, and I try to support it where I can. One of the conversations we had at the very beginning of Med4Hope was with a friend of your parents, who's a medical doctor. Remember, who was implemental. She was one of the founding members of the Association for Emergency Medicine, right?
Fitzal,
Professor Fitzal, and we tried to get her lessons learned and her experience. And she had exactly the same issue. She said, you know what? We were all medical practitioners, but we realized that the thing that we were trying to do required specialization, and that specialization was not available. So what your 20 years of street medicine taught you is all over the world, not just in Vienna, and all over Austria, all over Europe, all over the United States, there's institutions where there's volunteer medical practitioners who trying to do a good job, but one of the things that they're handicapped by is by the fact that, is there a shared knowledge base? Is there lessons learned?
It is not.
Are they including, or is everybody just doing it by the seat of their pants as best they can, which is valuable, but maybe not as effective or as efficient as possible?
I think the mistake is that in street medicine, we're now in a time when we think that it's enough to be a doctor and enough to be a general practitioner.
And enough to have a bleeding heart?
To be engaged. But that's not true anymore. It was true when there were no doctors back then, and we were happy to have some doctors who did this. But nowadays, there are such a lot of initiatives in street medicine, and during these 20 years or over 20 years, while I was doing that, I was very happy to watch everywhere in the world, also in Austria. We were the only one, besides the Barmherzige Brüder in Vienna. They did this for like 100 years, 200 years, I don't know. But we've been the only one in Austria. And all over the world, street medicine is now realized as a need, actually, a medical need.
Let's just to keep it simple. Let's kind of go through the building blocks, okay? Because somebody who's listening to this who has a medical insurance might say, well, who are your clients? How many clients are there? So you don't just deal with homeless people, right? You also accept people who, for example, might not be able to afford medical insurance,
no
right?
Insurance in Austria.
Or it might be refugees, right?
Yeah, right.
So it might be people who have an apartment, who might be a pension, but just can't afford to go to the doctor. And these
are ashamed to go to the
doctor. Who are ashamed to go to this. So the question might be, next question will be, well, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Do you have any? And if you don't have the numbers, I've done some Googling beforehand.
I think we have like 20,000 homeless people in Austria.
I'll verify the numbers based on my Google studies from today. Austria Ready for this? 34,000 homeless people. 34,000. Now, just to put this into perspective, based on HUD, which is the Housing Something Development Organization in the United States has just short of 600,000 homeless people. European Union beats the United States. Okay, 700,000 in total. Just so that you get an idea of how important this issue is. You might say, well, this is cute. There's some doctors who on the side are, putting some Band-Aids on a couple people who might cut their finger or something. We're talking about something that is a real issue. And we don't want to just look at the human factor of this and what this means for individuals and for their health and for their quality of living, but also what this means economically, because homelessness is not just something that impacts the homeless.
Yeah, of course.
It impacts us all.
Yeah,
okay. So there's 700,000 in Europe. Germany has 260,000. Austria, like I said, 34,000. UK, 271,000.
Oh.
And France, 320,000. Okay. These are just some of the basic numbers so that we know what kind of scale we're talking about. Now, this is what anybody who's kind of management or process minded might think. Okay, these people all have similar conditions, right? You could, if I asked you what are the top 10 conditions that a homeless person has, you would probably be able to list them, right? What are some of the top classical conditions that a homeless person might have?
Yeah, psychiatric or
definitely psychiatric issues.
Yeah.
The question is, how well versed is a medical profession to deal with psychiatric, unless it's a psychiatrist, right?
Yeah, at least it's depression that results from homelessness. It doesn't need to be the reason, but it is, there's the egg and I don't know how it's
the chicken or the egg.
The chicken and the egg. You never know. Is this person had a psychiatric issue and got on the street and lost everything because of this?
Yes.
Or is it just a reaction? Because I would also be depressive and I would also suffer from insomnia and depression and whatever and panic and fear if I would have been, thrown out of my apartment.
I'm smiling because I remember a conversation we had with a colleague of yours. I think it was in Innsbruck. When we did an exchange. Yeah. And she happened to have some statistics. And I remember asking her, because it interested me, how many people that are on the street suffer under mental health issues?
Yeah.
And I forget what the response was, but she basically said 90% or 100%. And she said something which was powerful, which I hadn't thought about. It says, either people become homeless because they have mental health issues, by the way, in many countries, in particular in the United States, because you just can't automatically put somebody with mental health issues into an institution. Okay. Yeah. A lot of people who have mental health issues end up on the street because nobody's taking care of them and they have a dissociative situation. But she said what I thought was equally powerful, says you can be completely mentally sane and balanced, but living on the street will create mental health issues. So this is a powerful situation. So it's kind of this endless cycle that you're dealing with. But to get back to it, I mean, if you might say, well, then the solution is, let's bring a solution. The solution is you need to have more psychiatrists on the Louisibus. But that doesn't really work either, right?
No, I think also GPs can do that, but they need this special education.
So they need to understand the situations, the type of psychiatric situations they're dealing with, and also the resistance that they might get from the potential. So that's probably one of the most dominant. What are other typical medical, I think it's called
wounds.
Indications?
Yeah.
Wounds, right?
And it's also a special field because they are all worse than you regularly see them. The wounds, you normally you have a wound and maybe it's infected or not. And let's compare it to like you have a wound and you get to the doctor and it's not, you get a bandage, you get prescription, whatever, you take it home, you have it in your bathroom, everyth's clear and tidy.
But I have facilities where I can clean myself.
You can clean
yourself. I have a certain discipline about sanitation.
That's not only the doctor.
I have a roof over my head.
You have to look at the whole problem because these guys, they don't have any bathroom or even toilets where they can clean the wounds, and they have, mostly they are infected.
Yeah.
So the treatment starts at another point.
It's an aggravated form of situation.
Course. And they have also pain.
Is the closest thing that I might think the closest type of medical field that might come to it might be, for example, the medical discipline that you have during military, right? So wars, right? Although I would even think that would be different because they deal with like bullet wounds and with shrapnel wound.
Yeah.
Your wounds are different again. But once again, this is just an example of why it requires specialization. It needs a special protocol of how to deal with it, right?
There's actually one special syndrome. I don't know the English word, but in the military they know it very well, and this is very often with homeless people. That's I don't know.
Soldatenfuß, right?
Yeah, like something like
which
that.
Which is literally translated means soldier's foot. And since I have...
it is another word also in German.
I know what the word is.
It.
The word is called trench foot.
But it was, first it was in the First World War.
It's called trench foot. Trench foot was called the infection that you would get if you're constantly in your shoes.
Yeah,
you're
right.
Not changing your... I'm not even a medical doctor, I know this. When you're not changing your socks, when you're exposed to water and other unhygienic situations.
And
it's called trench foot.
It's like the skin is
soap.
Like soap and
like liquid soap.
And
it's swollen.
Yeah, it's swollen and
painful.
That's very similar with the military.
So for all those people anybody who's ever been who's a medical practitioner who's ever practiced in a medical field unit will know that a lot of what emergency medicine has learned are from doctors who come back from military situations, because that's where there's the accelerated and exacerbated situations which require different forms of treatment. But maybe also more rapid, because you only have so much time to have an impact on this person, right?
Yeah.
So trench foot is another example. So psychiatric, mental health issues, and trench foot.
Yeah,
wounds. These could be stab wounds.
Dermatological problems.
Psoriasis would probably be...
No, psoriasis, no. It's more... really infections and all this.
Like I mean, what do you?
Yeah, that's an infection.
Yeah, so different types of
scarpies, all these parasites.
Okay, so also like flea bites and other insect bites, spider and all that.
That's, for example, also points out how important it is to treat these people in an adequate way, because it also has an impact and influence on the people in the country, because those infections are contagious. So also
it's a social health issue as well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
If you street medicine, you also help the other people, not only the homeless.
Now we're still on our checklist of classical medical, and there's the list is probably long. I'm sure that alcoholism, alcohol-based issues would be... Yeah,
alcohol, it's like a tree with a lot of branches, because alcohol causes such a lot of problems. But on the other hand, alcohol is the only medicine that they have if they have not an adequate medical treatment. Alcohol is for pain, is for sleep, is good for depression and to forget.
Well, we're not advertising here for alcohol.
No, of course we're not. But I mean,
it's their remedy. It's their household remedy
They look at it as a
universal solution, but it's
therapy, universal therapy.
But it actually creates a lot more damage.
Yeah, of course.
Is diabetes an issue?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But mostly diabetes that has been for a long time untreated.
Okay.
So most of them they don't even know that they have diabetes, because they are so used to it. The body got used to high blood sugar. Like if you would have like 300, you would be, I think, unconscious at least. But those
But the
guys,
homeless
they
people can
come and you just, by chance, you just check the blood sugar and they have over 300.
It's interesting that you mentioned this because I had a personal experience once with this as well. We, in front of one of the businesses that I used to work for, we used to have a hobo that lived there, a homeless person. He was a sweet guy, but he was a helpless alcoholic, and he used to greet us all when we walked in and out of the business. And every once in a while, we'd give him a couple bucks, or we'd have a conversation with him. And one of the things that totally fascinated me, over the years watching him, almost on a daily basis, I was fascinated. I said to myself, if I would live like this guy, I would live maybe for 3 months and I would pass away. And I worked at this place for at least 2 years, and I don't know how he survived. That's another thing I think, which is a medical phenomenon when you're dealing with homeless people that have a high tolerance for drugs and for alcohol, that their body reacts different to the conditions that they're in, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that's important to understand when you're dealing with them, right?
Yeah.
Is dysentery or digestive things a classical thing for homeless people? Gastritis, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
It's all due to alcohol, of course.
Okay.
Because alcohol causes gastritis that you can, and also stress causes gastritis, and they have permanent stress.
Okay.
It's very stressful. If you sleep in the street and you don't know if they take away or everything you have, or if they just attack you.
Well, I think a lot of people who are not homeless don't understand is that the homeless are exposed, right?
Yeah, of course.
There's homeless.
They have no door to close.
Yeah. There's homeless on homeless crime. But what's actually shocking, and this is a phenomenon that you've told me about several times, is that there's non-homeless people who attack homeless people as well, just for kicks and giggles.
Some kids do that. Here we have this in the internet. It's kind of a challenge. Who dares to kick them or steal something? Steal something. It's
terrible.
They make a battle out of it or a challenge.
So I'm sure we could go into an internal list of different conditions that you have to deal with. The list is long, and they all have their specific requirements that might be contextualized to being homeless. But let's kind of move forward into, this is kind of the precursor to Med4Hope, right? When did you finalize the idea? Where did you come up with the idea? We need to do something about the fact that there's no standard operating procedures or standardization in medicine for homeless people, right? For street medicine. When did you come up with the idea?
This was not really one special moment. It kind of grew into my plans were it was a lot of events, like when I had new doctors and they did terrible mistakes. And, the doctors, it wasn't only that the homeless people had a wrong treatment. It was also that the doctors got frustrated because they couldn't cope with it. They couldn't create trust.
They were unhappy with their.
They didn't understand why.
With their incapability to deal with something that they thought they were capable of dealing with.
Yes, and they didn't understand why they couldn't create compliance, and
why these darn homeless won't do what I want them to do.
Yeah, and why they are so unthankful. Is this
ungrateful?
Ungrateful. So the doctors themselves got kind of burnout or frustrated, and then they quit it, and they quit. And also there were terrible mistakes. For example, that's one only. I won't give you a medical education right here now, but for example, if you're a normal doctor and you see that people have these feet, swollen, and the ankles are swollen.
Water feet or
water feet. Yeah. You just used to give them diuretics. That's a classical treatment. But if you treat a homeless person, you have to think of the whole picture every time with every single medicine. If you give them diuretics, they have one trouser, no toilet.
So they have only one pair of underpants?
Yeah, one pair of underpants, one pair of trousers.
Maybe one pair of pants, which are not very clean to begin with.
Yeah, and no toilets available. So if you give them pills that, diuretics, that they lose the water, they will create other problems for them. So maybe they lose the place where they can sleep because of the incontinence, which occurs with alcohol. And then you give them the water pills, and the incontinence is even worse. And besides,
so then shelters won't take people who
lose urine all the time. And besides, it's not really also. On the one hand, for the person, it may create problems for the patient, but also it is not adequate in a medical way of treatment because they don't have these ankles because of a heart failure or a kidney insufficiency.
Which is a classic thing that somebody might come to your practice
which is the indication for diuretics, actually.
Yeah.
But they have mostly the swollen ankles because they're on their feet the whole day, you know? It's a venous problem, mostly. Venous, yeah. Because they're just on their feet. They cannot rest at home, you know, like put the feet somewhere up. So this
once again, we're coming back to...
This is really wrong to give them a diuretic. It's not only... It would be better if... It's hard to say, but if they would not have met any doctor, because the harm was bigger than the blessing, or I don't know the word.
So
right
what
now.
I think is important for us people who have the luxury of being medically insured and having a roof over our head, medical practice is something that's evolved over decades and decades. They made many mistakes, and those many mistakes led to a standard of practice that we all have a benefit of. And what you're addressing with in homeless people is that this practice does not always apply perfectly to a different context. And the context that we're talking about here is somebody who might have mental health issues, who might be an alcoholic, and who doesn't have a roof over his head, and the possibility of acting the same way that a normal patient is. So this is powerful. But I remember, because I was there, there was a particular evening when you finally made a decision to create Med4Hope. What was that? Where was that?
Yeah, that's the name. That's the reason why it's called Med4Hope in English and not the German. Should I tell in German right now?
Yeah,
the German name would be medizinische Hilfe für obdachlose Menschen.
Sounds very sexy.
Oh yeah. It was in Texas, in Austin, Texas.
Okay. Now, anybody who knows anything about Austin, Texas, it's a wonderful, wonderful city, capital of my home state. But when we were there visiting, it had a huge issue. I think 50, I don't know what the number was, but thousands and thousands and thousands of homeless people that were living all over downtown.
Yeah,
right?
and when we've been there, I saw all these tents under the bridges of the highway. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a festival. Cool, let's go there. But, and then I saw some young doctors, and I was talking to your friend actually about the situation for homeless people, and that I'm working in this field. And then we were talking about medical aid for homeless people. And then in the morning, I woke up and I thought, Med4Hope. Yeah, that's great. Let's do that.
So Med4Hope was something that the idea wasn't born in Texas, but the name for it was born in Texas.
Yes.
Okay.
It was
and the word hope is actually a play on the word homeless people.
Yeah, because homeless people does not
sexy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound handy. And homeless does not even, at least in German, stand for people without a house. Mm-hmm. It also means people without a home in sense of without a home country.
Yeah.
Immigrants, refugees. So homeless people are also people
could be displaced people, refugees.
They have maybe an apartment or a house, but they are homeless in sense of they're from another country. They have no right to be here, actually, in an official way,
so
not legal.
Let's talk about the beginning of Med4Hope. Med4Hope is formerly in Austria, in Vienna, a registered Verein is the German word, which means club or
we're trying to build up a society.
Yeah, society, and tell us a little bit. So, what were some of the initial projects or ideas that you worked on that you tried to establish with Med4Hope? Because you obviously have a mission, and what was that mission?
Yeah, the mission is to provide skills and tools to other doctors who do this. And we first created a course in Austria Ärztekammer, Medical Association,
okay. So
Austrian
let's
Medical
take
Association.
step by step, because I think anybody who might be listening to that's also from a nonprofit organization says, listen, I do the same thing. I want to compare notes with what you did. What you identified, and we've talked about this, is you've identified the fact that there is no international standard. There's no national standard for how to best treat.
Best practice.
No best practices.
Yeah.
So that's what you committed to. You got together with a bunch of different other volunteer doctors and said, why don't we collectively get together, do knowledge sharing, and collect knowledge and create a standard. Yeah. Now, I was involved in the beginning of this organization as well, and I used my wealth of knowledge from project management background. And for all of those of you who are certified, we project managers suffered under different but similar conditions where most project managers began working on projects without having any formal training or without having any best practices or standard. And our international standard is called the Guide to the PMBOK, Project Management Body of Knowledge. And I remember one of my suggestions is, well, why don't you use the same model, to do the same thing for what you're doing? And you can call it, it won't even change that much. All you have to do is change one letter. Because if you call it the SMBOK, which stands for Street Medicine Body of Knowledge, you basically have something that's internationally understandable. Yeah. There's a reference point from it, and it might be a good starting point,
Yeah, we do. We're working on that.
So that's important. It's funny because Rico, Nelly, and I were talking about standards just before this podcast, and we were talking about how difficult and how time-consuming that is. You had the idea, is this Street Medicine Body of Knowledge, does it exist? Is it finished?
It is not finished yet.
It's a work in progress.
It's over 200 pages, and I can't decide what to take. And all the time I think I should write to this specialist and that specialist and to this interview and ask, because there is such a lot of knowledge, but it's so hard to collect. I really contacted a lot of people
who are all willing.
Yeah, but it's hard to collect. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think we have to organize ourselves. All this street medicine. There is now in like 2 weeks a congress in London. And
what's it called?
It's called, I think, Street Medicine Symposium. And we have one which is Armut und Gesundheit in Germany, which is once a year. And we connect in Austria several times a year. But these are all groups who are not connected to each other again.
So there's lots of initiatives out there.
Yeah.
All of these initiatives have all the same problems.
Yeah.
All these initiatives are solving the problems in their own way.
Yeah.
A lot of these solutions are similar to one another, but we still don't have a common language and a common process. So this is important for developing standards. You said, well, listen, we acknowledge this problem. We're not going to solve it right off the bat. So what you decided to do, let's start small.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start in Vienna. Let's start by creating collaboration in Vienna, right?
Yeah, and collecting knowledge and teaching. We have already certification.
So let's take it step by step. So one of the things you acknowledge is the standard takes time.
Yeah.
Another thing that the standard takes is a standard is not something that can rarely be written by one person. It needs to be a collective process. Yeah. Okay, which just means it's time consuming and you're in the process. Yeah. And I think you said something the other day which I thought was very, very beautiful. You said one of the things when you have a vision of doing something grand, one of the things that often comes to you as an epiphany is the fact that if you want to get great things done, you have to let things go and let people into your lives.
Yeah.
Right? I think you
don't do it all on your own.
Yeah. And you're a master of this. I know a lot about you. There's some things that you're not so good at, which is like structure and organization.
Yeah.
And
I'm a hunter, not a gatherer.
Yeah. But you're sensational. You're a great networker, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about Med4Hope. So what is Med4Hope? It's not a for-profit organization.
No.
Does it belong to anybody?
No, it does not
Okay,
belong.
I think this is an important principle that we need to talk about,
yeah.
okay? Is it something that is trying to create IP that only belongs to Med4Hope?
No.
No. So what you're trying to use, I don't know if the correct term is a public domain, or there's another word for it. What you're basically trying to do is you're trying to create a standard, but you're not trying to keep the standard for yourself.
Yeah.
You're willing to share the standard with anybody, commonplace or public domain, anybody that's willing to use it. Okay.
Yeah. All our skills and tools are free.
There's no copyright infringement. If somebody says, "Hey, can I take this one to one?"
Of course. Yeah.
So that would be one valuable.
Try this at home.
Try this at home, and you're also open to anybody adding.
Yeah, of course.
As long as they talk to you about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one important principle. I think the second important principle that we've kind of talked about now is that it doesn't belong to a particular institution. You work a lot with the Caritas, but you also work with AmbaMed.
Yeah.
You work with other organizations. One of the things you said is that Med4Hope needs to be an independent, open to all organization that crosses boundaries, national boundaries, organizational boundaries, maybe religious boundaries if it is a religious institution behind it. It is unbeholden to anyone and open to all.
Yeah.
Okay. Your actual purpose is to provide a professionalization of medical practitioners and social workers when it comes to dealing with medical issues for homeless people.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. So that's a work in progress. We're going to be interesting. Do you have a approximate? I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you. Do you have any kind of vision on when you want to have at least the first version of it?
This year?
For anybody who's listening to this who says, "Listen, I might have something to contribute," we'll put her email at the end of the podcast, right? You're
show
interested
notes.
here, right?
Have you show notes?
What's that?
You put it in the show notes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So the next thing where you've made huge steps forward, which I really have to express my admiration for you with a couple expressions of ideas and visions managed to collect people around you who said, "We're willing to support you," right? Yeah. You have a core team of people that are willing to help you. And you have a number of different doctors who had connections to the Medical Association of Austria. Now, the Medical Association in any country is a big deal. Okay. These are usually the gray eminences of the medical profession in a country. They're not easily accessible. They usually are more traditional and classic, but you, in the shortest time, managed to get open doors. The very president of the Medical Association in Austria.
I had a great help of Dr. Jurek.
So Dr. Jurek is part of your core team.
Actually,
Carl,
he did it.
Yeah.
He connected
Carl said,
us.
"You know what? Let me talk to this guy."
Yeah.
I talked to him on an occasional basis. He went to the president. What was the name of the president at the time?
Oh, Steinhardt.
Steinhardt, very good name, close to Engelhardt. Steinhardt, and said, "Listen, we have this idea, and this is the beauty, and this is, I think, what is meant to be a lesson learned and a strong encouragement to any of you disruptive thinkers out there. Don't wait for the time to be ready.
No.
Don't wait for the time when you have everything organized, when you've written your standard, when you've done all your stuff. What the magic often happens. In German, we say zwischen Tür und Angel, which means when you're walking from one room to the other, what happens in between that transition from one room to the other, right? When you're passing through the door, magical things can happen if you reach out and touch people. And what Carl, who's a great guy, did, also a medical practitioner who's in retirement, who's a huge helper, also very, very passionate about, said, listen, he mentioned it to the president of the Medical Association. What did he say?
Yeah, he was in for it.
He was like, "This is great.
Yeah.
This is great." He said, "Let's make it part of the official curriculum of the formal Professional Association of Austria of medical practitioners." Right. So it is, and doctors have this catalog of different educations that they can take, where they get different points, right?
It's not
continued education.
Continued education.
And they get like development points for it.
Yes.
Yes. And you developed.
Yeah, if you want to maintain your doctor's degree,
it's kind of like with the project management professionals.
I don't know that. You have to do this educations, this add-on educations, and you get points, and you get a diploma which is called Fortbildungsdiplom. I don't know why you
So for all you project managers who might be listening to this, it kind of rings true. This is what we call PDUs for PMI certification, right? PDUs are called project development units. And in your case, they would be medical development units, which is a form of, you have to keep your accreditation by continued education to guarantee that you stay on the latest status, right? Now, I don't want to pass this up. You are part of the formal catalog of medical practitioners. If I am a medical doctor, I can look at this catalog and I will look in there and I will find, what's the name of your program?
Med4Hope.
You can find a Med4Hope program, which basically does what for medical practitioners?
We treat them how to treat the people.
So let's be more specific. How many days are we talking about? How long is this?
It's five courses.
5 courses or 5 days?
5 different courses.
5 different courses. How many days?
Oh no, 5. It's 5 days.
Okay, 5 days, 5 courses.
So, 5 courses, and we have add-on courses.
Okay. So it's also a work in progress. But you've identified the 5 core capabilities that would be helpful to a doctor.
Themes, actually.
Themes, if they're interested in doing volunteer work. Okay. Which, by the way, I think this is really important. We talked about the ramifications of homeless and homeless illness on society. We don't have the statistics, unfortunately, but the statistics, I'm sure, are substantial. One shouldn't forget that if you are homeless, the likelihood of you needing medical attention is fairly high, much higher than a normal citizen, right? Yeah. So let's say we have in Austria, we have 35,000 homeless people. Think about the strain this has on emergency services, hospitals that have to deal with on a continual basis. And sometimes homeless people have the tendency, they might get picked up by an ambulance, which costs money that they're not going to pay. There's no insurance for them. They bring them to the hospital. They sit around there. They get treatment. They might stand there. And then before they know it, they leave the hospital. And 2, 3 days, 4 days, they're back for the same thing. So this is an endless story.
Also in one day. If they're not picked up, they stay there. They don't want to go with the ambulance. The ambulance don't want to argue, or they don't want to pick them up. Whatever reasons might be. One normal patient might need an ambulance once. 4 times a day,
and
maybe.
A hospital, and a homeless person might need.
I mean homeless people.
Yeah, but I'm talking non-homeless person only needs one ambulance.
Yeah, one ambulance, one day.
And a homeless person might need for the same situation.
4 times.
4 times.
And that's what we also do. Is we do interdisciplinary education. So we don't.
Well, I love the fact you're all over the place, but that's my job to keep a little bit in structure. So you have this, and I want to mention it's a core program. Okay, you've picked out the things that you thought had the bit. Now let me ask you, what's the feedback that you get from the doctors? Before we get to feedback, how well booked are your courses?
They're fully booked.
They're fully booked.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the catalog is hundreds of different seminars.
I don't know.
Okay, and you have your courses are full.
Yeah.
Yeah, you even have additional requests.
But we can't.
So you can't even facilitate all the requests.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you, as a non-doctor, why would a medical practitioner be interested in Med4Hope courses?
Because now the first courses were only for all the participants were people who were working in the field, in the street.
So but people who were actually working as volunteers.
Yeah, so they did the course. Or volunteers, or also in organizations where they get paid, actually. Okay. And now, even more, they're attending these courses, doctors who don't voluntarily work in this field, but they have to. They have to. They work in a hospital, in an emergency room, who work in a hospital, but they are always confronted with the problems of homeless people, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Okay.
So they come now to our course, and they don't intend to work in the street, actually, but they want, what should I do with this guy?
Actually,
when he comes to my hospital,
in volleyball, there's a principal event when you're playing in volleyball, right? You hit the ball over the net, and usually the first player won't just automatically
put it back.
You don't put it back. What you do is you set the ball, and then you usually hit the ball 3 times, right? It's kind of the strategy of volleyball. And what I was doing for you was I was setting the ball for you. I was hoping for all of us non-doctors, one of the biggest complaints we non-doctors have is that we often question whether or not doctors still have a heart, whether they're emotional, whether they care, or whether they're just machines. Because unfortunately, the medical profession is a very, very difficult profession, which can give you PTSD and make you emotionally callous, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason I was asking this question and was hoping you were saying is because at heart, all medical practitioners have a big heart and they care about people. I hope that was what I was hoping that you were going to say.
That's why they study medicine.
So you would agree with that statement?
We now also are at the University of Vienna. And it's our first year at a medical university. And we start with the students.
So we were talking about your 5 core programs that you have. That you initially, your first clientele that you took care of was other professionals who volunteer, who work for organizations like Caritas, Amba Med, Neune Haus, people that understand and acknowledge that part of their daily routine has to do with dealing with people who are homeless or who are displaced or who might just be impoverished. Okay, so that's one. But then you said that's only I don't know how many hundred that might be. But now you have a whole bunch of new doctors that are coming into play, right? Yeah. Who have to deal with homeless people in their regular profession, hospitals, emergency services, paramedics. So what you did is, and you realized that this is a wonderful concept that just doesn't just benefit medical practitioners. Now you've gone to medical aides, you've gone to nurses, you've gone to social workers, of course. Right? So what's the feedback of these people when they
they love it actually.
Why do they love it?
Because they never heard about it.
Okay.
And because they need it in their daily work.
Are they surprised by the wealth of knowledge, the things that they learned that they thought they already knew?
Sometimes, some of them, they were sent from their hospital, for example,
so it wasn't their choice.
It wasn't their choice, and then they're there, and they say, "Oh wow, that's really interesting."
So you give them food for thought.
Yeah, and now what my next idea for this education is, that's not official right by now, but I was thinking of collaborating with the hospital so that they have one person or two who is in charge, who has an idea of street medicine, so that he's the one who is responsible.
The assigned team member if a homeless person comes in that's disheveled,
so who's
soiled, who's inebriated, who's despondent.
Who has gone through our course and has an idea. For example, if you treat the people, and normally you just, where do you put them after that? So you send them out back on the streets.
Now this is important because this is another aspect of Med4Hope. One of the principles of Med4Hope is not only to deal with medical issues, but also to work as a facilitator. There's so many wonderful and valuable organizations. Yeah. We spent some time in 2 weeks in Texas, and we started doing some research of how many different organizations deal with homeless people, and there's endless numbers. Okay, they all do great work. They're all wonderful, wonderful people. We did some work in San Antonio. We walked across the streets, and I remember you helped somebody who was overdosing. It was very impactful.
For you, it was very exciting.
Exciting. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was impressive to see what the real need on the street is, and what wonderful people. And what totally amazed me, and maybe we should use this as an example. We were in San Antonio, and we were walking with she was not a doctor, but she was
from a military
former military officer who had a medical training over the military, so she had paramedic status, high level, right? Yeah. And she also talked about her patients and her clients, and she would travel, she would make appointments with homeless people and go to where they are. And remember, we had an appointment with somebody that didn't show up, and while we were looking for these people, we saw a bunch of homeless people underneath the bridge. It was 40 degrees in Celsius, close to 105 Fahrenheit, right? And we were looking for this person, and while we were looking for this person, they said,
"Here's another guy.
There was a guy who was having an overdose, right? And what I was totally impressed by, and by the way, we were there with 4 other volunteers. The person who was leading the program, great person, and 3 other doctors. Okay, you were doing most of the work.
No, I didn't.
No. I don't mean to take anything away from what they were doing, but they really looked to you. You went into action. You got into the flow. It was like second nature to you.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
Yeah, of course. After 20 years.
And it was really wonderful afterwards when we sat down and had coffee. It was great to see how you guys were sharing experiences.
Yeah, it was great for me too.
And you were saying, you should have this in your backpack. Yeah. You should have this, and basic needs, right?
Yeah.
So this is some of the ongoing, the number of potential people that are interested in your program is growing. Social workers, street workers, right, are doing it. But you mentioned it beforehand, universities as well, right?
Yeah.
You've become part of the university curriculum for medical training.
Yeah.
Right?
This year, so for the first year,
okay.
We just start there. That's because the young, the students, when you start studying medicine, you're so open-hearted. You want to help people. You want to, you're not spoiled by this bureaucratic hospital
system thinking.
Yeah. And they are so interested in it. And they
I think from Slovenia, was it? There's an interesting group of medical students. Czech Republic, right? Yeah. They actually make it part of their medical education to provide services to homeless people, which is another great initiative.
We try to do that right now.
Okay. So that's that. So you're working on a street medicine body of knowledge. You have an existing program. It's recognized by the Medical Association of Austria. Yeah. You're working with other cities in Austria to share this knowledge.
Yeah, we provide like street medicine consulting. So if, for example, in another town, they want to build up also a mobile offer for the medical treatment or other initiatives, then we go there and we do the consulting and how you build it up and what do you need, like in project management actually. Yeah. But we're not project managers, but we know what we need for.
What are other projects that you're working on? Because one project kind of triggers another idea after another, right?
Yeah.
So let me, maybe if you might have forgotten this, one of the issues that came up that's a very huge issue, and we haven't really found a solution, but we have a couple ideas of how to kind of analog solutions, is that homeless people obviously are migrant. Yeah. They don't always stay in the same place. Yeah. Some of them do, but a lot of them move. Yeah. It's fairly hard to identify them, and it's fairly difficult to know what their medical history is, right? In Austria, you have a medical card.
Yeah, e-card.
An e-card, and when you have a medical condition, when you get prescriptions, when you can find most of that information.
Yeah, on the e-card.
On the e-card. Yeah. Homeless people don't have an e-card.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a huge issue, right?
That's why I told you that we have skills and tools. That's our subtitle for medical aid of homeless people. We provide skills and tools, and one of these tools, maybe what you're meaning right now, is it's a health passport. It's just a passport where you can write, if you treat these people, you write down what you gave.
It looks like a vaccination passport?
Yeah, it looks very similar to a vaccination passport.
It's kind of the size of a passport.
Yeah. And it comes with a little bag, and that's what they love, because they can put in this bag, they can put their medicine back, and how do you call it? Waschtasche in English? I don't know.
What's it called? A toiletry bag.
Yeah.
Toiletry bag.
Yeah,
that's your toothpaste and.
Yeah, so they can put in their stuff.
It's waterproof.
Even if you give some medicine to them, you have now in your bathroom or in your kitchen a little small box where you put all your pills in and you have everything in order. But they don't have it. They just have two plastic
bags, maybe a backpack.
And then you give them the medicine, trolley. They will lose it anyway. So we give them the document.
What you do is passport. One of the tools that you came up is with a health pass, right? That you provide them, where you give different social institutions the possibility to write what services they've done for the client, what happened, right? So that you have a little bit of a history, which creates a better quality of service long term.
Of course.
Okay. Now, why isn't it? We've also looked into the possibility of digitalization of this. Why is that an issue?
I don't know. In America, when we've been to Texas, do you remember they told us that they have an app on the mobile phone and they can write everything. And we tried to do this in Austria also with professional IT support, but we couldn't manage to do that.
Important thing for those people who have never been homeless, you wouldn't anticipate that homeless people have mobile phones, but they might lose everything, but one thing that almost everybody has, even in their most remote regions of Africa, where you might not have internet connection or a roof over your head, but almost everybody nowadays has a mobile phone, and homeless people have home. So in the United States, this was I don't remember the name of it, but one of those things that
it was an app, a health app.
Yeah. In the United States, the solution is that they have this health app where you can do this digital, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not possible due to legal regulations and also resistance. We could not use
the American model. Maybe.
So that might be a future thing that Med4Hope might do some advocacy for.
We would need some IT specialists to create
any IT specialists out there who have an idea of how to digitalize
health
for homeless people or for migrant people, so that you can get a health history together. Especially if you have like diabetes or liver issues or kidney issues or whatever else.
Yeah, otherwise, you have guys with hypertonia or epilepsy, which is very, very often in street medicine, because it's also the reason to become homeless. Because if you have epilepsy, you call it in English?
Epilepsy.
It's right. You lose your driving license. If you lose your driving license, you lose your job, you lose your marriage, you lose your house. And so this is a very common disease. And even if you have no epilepsy in the beginning, you might get it from alcohol. When you don't drink alcohol, you can get these attacks. So, and every
time... You get it if you don't drink alcohol?
Yeah.
She's constantly making advertisement for alcohol here. Cheers.
Drink.
No, we're not making
So that's a very common thing that happens. And I missed my point now. It was too much now.
We were talking about digitalization of the records.
Yeah, so they get a medical treatment for epilepsy. And there are a lot of different medicines.
Yeah.
So here, an epileptic, how do you call it? Event? Epileptic event.
Incident,
gets to the hospital, if he's lucky or she. Then she gets treatment A. Next time, she gets treatment B, and next time C,
and there's no
so
coordination.
On. Yeah, and nobody knows what happened first.
Yeah.
And so... You
might have a snowball effect that you might give them a treatment which is not optimal.
It's not continual.
And it snowballs because everybody's doing different treatments and the treatments aren't coordinated in the best combination to provide an effective and efficient way of treating the patient.
And all of them have chronic diseases. Yeah. So chronic diseases needs chronic treatment.
So let's talk about, because this is another thing, we often talk about, we have great aspirations, and when you're faced with difficult situations, how to create a solution for difficult problems. How do you do this? Sometimes the best way to do it is analog, right? So what you did, instead of waiting for an app, you actually just created a paper version of it, and you did it in how many different languages?
I think 8.
Yeah.
On each passport, you have 3 languages. So it's 4 different. Yeah, it's 12.
And what you basically do is you go and you pass these out to all the different charitable organizations.
Yeah, and and they love it. The people love it. Not the organizations. It's really hard. I never thought it. That the organizations, we don't need that. We have our own documentation, but it's in their computers. So if this guy goes somewhere else, you can't share it. But we don't need to thank. It's a nice idea, but we don't need it. Yeah. But if we pass it over to the people, they love it. The patients love it. It's, everything. They don't get any gifts or presents or appreciation. And so
So giving them small gifts, nicks and knacks, we call it in English, makes them feel like they're human beings, right?
Yeah, they're human beings and they are seen in their needs. Yeah. They don't need only tablets, but if you're a doctor, you have a special status. I don't know. I don't know why, actually, because doctors are also normal people. Yeah. But the patients, they regard you as a special person. Mm-hmm. So if the doctor gives me a passport and she says, look here, I got this passport special for you in your home language, in the language of your heart. It shows
that you value the individual.
It's a kind of appreciation,
It shows that you matter, that you're an individual. I see you.
And you've got this type.
I think the African word for it is Ubuntu.
Savobona.
Savobona,
so I see you and you have this, it must be hard to have this chronic pain or this chronic diabetes, whatever. And now we're going to write it down. What's your problem? So the next doctor that will meet you, you can show the next doctor's appointment, show it to him or her. Mm-hmm. And they regard these passports like
something special.
Something very precious, actually.
So simple tools. There's another project that I want to talk to you about. One thing that's not necessarily a project, but it's something that you're helping facilitate is you're also helping different other nonprofit organizations pool medical supplies, right? So you work together with pharmaceutical companies, you work together with other nonprofit organizations to provide a pooling of medicines that you can provide to homeless people as well, right?
We just had one project where we offer this special education, for example, in the, I don't know the English word, nachgehende medizinische Betreuung. Maybe you could translate it.
Well, that's the next project we're talking about. Nachgehende Medizin. I don't know what the English terminology, but it basically means is since homeless people are not stationary, or they might live in a bush.
Yeah, that's what we've done in Austria.
What you do, nachgehend means to follow up, okay? To follow them
meet
to where
the people where they live, actually.
Yeah. You actually, what you do is and there's we can look at some concrete examples. Maybe that would be better for the listeners to understand. You know of a homeless lady that lives in a remote bathroom somewhere in the woods.
Yeah.
Right? With Carl.
Yeah.
And what happens, this is a program that you guys initiated and you have the support of different other charitable organizations that provide you with social workers.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a psychologist or psychiatrist and you have a medical practitioner. And what those 2 to 3 people do is they go to the place.
Yeah, that's what we did actually in Texas.
Yeah.
But what's new in Austria is that we cooperate very closely with the social workers. So the street workers are those who call us.
So they know where these people are.
Yeah, they go there and they see every time.
And they might know them because they're passing out free food.
Yeah, some medical issue getting worse. And they look at it each day. And what happens right now is that one day they can't move anymore, or they're unconscious, they lose their consciousness. Yeah. And so they call the ambulance. And then all the circle starts again. So what we try to fill is the space in between the ambulance and the street workers. This is a very common routine all over the world in street medicine. It's not our invention. But what's new is that we do the education before the doctors go there. So we tell them what will happen.
You link the three parties, the social party, the psychological party, and the medical party.
Yeah, always the street, you never go without a street worker. Never, ever. That's the first rule.
Well, probably also because one of the big issues that you have with homeless people, for example, that are some might reside in a bush or in some abandoned building.
Trust issue.
Is some of these people have high issues of mental health and disassociation, and the only way to come anywhere close to them so they can actually treat them is to build trust, relationship.
And the street workers, they are known by the people, and they usually give them food or backpacks or whatever they need.
Let me, because I know that we've only been able to even touch the surface of what street medicine means, but let's use this as a concrete example. I remember some of the very, very distinct stories that you tell what do you do when you walk up to somebody that you meet for the first time? You might see or there might be an indication of a serious issue, but you don't automatically address it, right?
No.
So give me an example. How do you interact with somebody that you meet for the first time?
First of all, I introduce myself because that's what I do with everybody, not only with homeless people. And I introduce myself and ask them for their name. And I'm a medical doctor and maybe I can help you. These guys, the street workers, they brought me because they maybe thought that I could be useful for you in any way. And then sometimes it depends, if there are psychiatric problems and they say, oh no, I don't need anything, this bloody feet, it's not blood, it's from the CIA and they have put something in my food.
Yeah, they have psychosis, yeah.
And I don't know, I don't need anything because if you touch it, it will get worse. And are you from the CIA? And then I say, oh no, I'm not, but I can imagine that really gives you a lot of fear if you always have to be very attentive or,
on your guard, yeah.
Yeah, on your guard, and that's really annoying, that's really lame, I'm with you, that's bad. And they say, oh yeah, that's really bad. And then, you get in the discussion and they tell you.
So and then you use the classical strategy. By the way, there was a very interesting, I think, I'm trying to remember the person who wrote the book, a very well-known book that talked about hidden phenomenon. And one of the hidden phenomenon was that many, many years ago in the United States, they found out, they did a study on patients, and it was insurance companies that were paying the study. And what they were doing is they asked, the reason why they were motivated to do the study is because there was in the United States, you can legally create claims, and it's very, very expensive. If there's malpractice, doctors have to pay millions. So what insurance companies did to kind of prevent this is they did a study to differentiate which doctors get sued and which doctors don't get sued. And they actually found out that there was a certain percentage of doctors that had the same level of malpractice as other doctors, but never got any claims against them. And they were very interested in, they said, well, what are they doing differently? What do you think they did differently? I know you do this in your practice.
They had to trust the people.
They spent on average 5 to 10 minutes more talking to their patients during the interaction.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things you do with the homeless people is you spend a good part of the time building trust but I've seen some of the patients you've had. I'm thinking of one particular one who has the issue with the face. I mean, incredible. I mean, he really has. He shocks anybody that sees him. So we were talking about the German terminology Nachgehende Medizin, which means follow-up medicine in English. I don't know if that's really a very common term in the United States.
I don't either.
What does it mean? What is follow-up? I mean, it's kind of deductive, but what does it mean?
It means that you meet the people where they live.
Okay. It also means that you follow them to where they are in case they've been treated in a hospital and you want to follow up with them. Yeah. And you want to make sure that they're, for example, if they have a knife wound, okay, what do they change their dressing? Right, their bandages, stuff like that. Okay, good. And this is not you said this is not something you obviously invented. When we were in common. San Antonio, it's very common practice.
Everyone does.
I think this is another thing which is important, which is kind of strange, because I often say some of the key issues that you find in society are the same everywhere. There's homeless issue in most countries. The medical issues of these homeless people are the same everywhere. And the solutions that we come up with, for example, mobile medical stations, stationary medical stations, social workers, providing them, for example, one of the things you do also in Lusibus is you provide people with new underwear, pants, shoes, backpacks, medical supplies. You might say, well, these are not unique solutions. Okay, many different organizations come up with more or less the same solutions, but the key that we're talking about here, is it standardized? Do we all kind of work together? We'll talk about whether or not these different organizations, how well they collaborate towards the end of the discussion. I'd like to hear what you say about this. But we were talking about follow-up medicine, and this is not something you invented, but this is something you're supporting from a medical profession perspective, right?
Yeah, we're trying to get quality in it.
Okay.
So we have standards, as you mentioned in the beginning. So we have one backpack, and the content is standard. So we have
Say it in German, I'll translate.
I don't know if you Empfehlungen.
Suggestions? Recommendations?
Recommendations. What should be in it? What is best practice?
For example, as brilliant as our colleagues, I call them colleagues because that's what I consider them to be, in San Antonio were, right? What were things
they had no airway management.
Okay, they didn't have any airway management in the backpack, which should be standard. What else did they not have?
I don't remember.
I'll say this. What was the thing that you gave the patient?
Nacanti. So that's the antagonist for the morphine.
For overdose?
Yeah, but they had it.
You got one of them from his girlfriend.
Yeah, but they had one in the package, and the other one was from the girlfriend.
There should be some kind of standard on how many of these should you have in your backpack, right? So these are just some things that make life easier if there's standardization.
And it should be documented, because with every patient you treat, you get more information about the needs and what you're missing in your equipment. And if you just, would be great if you would have this or that, and it's just like in the air somewhere, but it is not, you have to bring it to the ground, you have to document it. Okay, what we would like to have is that, and what's good for us, and what works good for us, and what we missed in our equipment, and we collect this to make the best.
It's about optimization of the products and services that you.
The problem with this kind of medicines, and I also worked in Africa in a refugee camp in the Western Sahara. The problem with this kind of medicine is that you're so, at least we have a doctor, and at least somebody goes there. So we're happy with what we have, but that we need standards, and we need quality, and we need an education in this field. I think that's not seen very often. It's the main thing. I have this project. If we connect in our field with the other doctors, everybody talks about his projects, his new treatments, his new this and that, and the other say, oh God, that's interesting. But then you leave the meeting and you know what they do, but that's it.
What's kind of ringing in the back of my head, I'm a big fan of lean project management or lean quality management, and I don't know if that says something to you. It says something to you because you know it from practice. But one of the things that project managers are becoming more and more open to is the concept of lean thinking. And one of the things that lean thinking talks about is you need to understand what the processes are that you use to achieve certain things. And optimizing these processes is a key issue. And one of the things that you have to look at when you're trying to improve what you're doing is you have to look, and they call it MUDOs or wastes. Where are you unnecessarily creating lapses in quality, which might be only small incidences, but as a whole have an impact on what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Okay. For example, do you have what you need in your backpack? Okay. Is there a standardization of this? Is there a standardization of this? Do I know if I do this, I know exactly what my counterpart is doing? This optimization of process that everybody has a common language and a common process is a key issue to what you guys are trying to promote. Let me ask you a question. We should have probably mentioned this at the beginning. When did Med4Hope start?
2019.
So you've been around for 4 years, 3.5?
I've been around with the idea for 4 years.
You've been pregnant with the idea for a long time.
Yeah, but
since when have you formally been since when does a logo exist? Since when have you been working as a recognized?
Like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
We now have our second anniversary.
I don't know how much we've been able to convey this to the listeners, but for the fact that you've existed for 2 years, it is amazing what your small organization, because it's a small organization, you have a very minimal budget. Okay. The amount of impact you've had on the medical community, on the medical profession, on the medical university, on social workers, how you integrate with other different organizations, right? Incredibly valuable. What are things that you foresee for the future? What would you like to, where would you like to see Med4Hope going in the next 2 years?
I would like that our education is not only in Austria or only Vienna. We have been to Tyrol, and I would love if our book, like you call it, body of knowledge, is published to exchange with other organizations.
So you would like to multiply the good work that you do here, not because Austria is special or because Med4Hope is better than any other organization,
I'd love
but you kind of want to give it as a gift to the community so that it has a broader impact.
Yeah, I'd love to have my vision is that there's an acknowledgement that this is a very special part of medicine and a very special field of medicine, and that you need education for it. You need not only to exchange my organization with the next one and what do we do, and you need really a standard and guidelines. So
you want to use Vienna and Austria as a testing ground for something like the SMBOK, and share it then with anybody who's willing to. That's a great ambition.
Yeah.
Okay, and maybe also get their input on it, right? Yeah. Let me ask you a very personal question. Where do you see your personal qualities that you think made a difference in Med4Hope?
I'm blind for limits.
Okay, so
you know what I mean?
There's nothing's impossible to you?
There are things impossible, but there's a lot more possible than we think.
Yeah, there's more I'm possible than impossible. Okay.
I won't manage to fly.
Okay.
But I can manage to find a way to get up in the air.
Yeah.
So
that's a great quote. I like that. Yeah.
I don't see the problems, and of course I see the stones in my way, but moreover I see the way and I see the.
So you have vision.
You
have passion.
Yeah.
You're charismatic.
And I have my patience.
Yeah.
And they are my real why. I could not say that's why I do that. I just see my patient and how they.
So to say this in a weird way, I'm going to say it kind of esoterically. You're kind of aligned with your patients, your patient's need, your vision, and your organization, Med4Hope. You're kind of on a wavelength. You're kind of feed off each other. There's kind of a vibrational coherence between. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but I like that concept.
Yeah.
So that's what you're good at. You're also, people like you. I wouldn't expect you to say it, but I can tell you people like you. I mean, this is something. I mean, I like her, but that should be expected. But I'm always surprised with how. So and this kind of ties in with the second question. Where do you see your weaknesses?
My weaknesses I mentioned before. I'm not a gatherer. I'm a hunter.
Okay.
And my weaknesses are in structure.
So when it comes to organization, when it comes to planning, it will be quite direct. You suck.
I'm the one with the seeds. I'm going out at this seed and this tree and this year.
Johnny Appleseed is a classical American. You're Johnny Appleseed. People flock to you. People like you. People see that you're authentic. But you're not.
I'm putting the seeds in the earth, but I'm not doing the gardening
You're
work.
not the classical attention to detail person, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the things that you think that we as an organization need to do to become perfect? And I'll mention it, right? One of the things I often ask you when you said you wanted me to get involved, I said, what do you need me to get involved? I'm not a medical professional. What do you want a project management for? What was your response?
Because Exactly. That's what I need you for, because you are a project manager. And I'm the hunter. You need a gathering.
So you need somebody who can pull things together, can integrate it, can appreciate the big picture, but also can look at the attention to the detail, create structure, sustainability of communication, stuff like that.
Okay. Our ancestors, they wouldn't have survived in their tribes if they wouldn't have had special positions for special talents. Yeah. If there is only a hunter, who would take care for the distribution of the meat?
So one of the things I had advised you to do, and because a lot of the classical challenges that you face, administrative challenges you face, is you need a certain level of what I call the hidden resources, the magical hidden resources that in the background enable things, okay? And we often underappreciate or don't understand how important they are, and I think that's where our organization, we need people who can pull the strings in the background, and we're working on that. If anybody who's listening, and I'm not making a call for donations, but if anybody says, you know what, I like what you're doing, you have in Germany called Spendenkonto. You have a GoFundMe or some kind of fund where people contribute.
We're trying to build up the GoFundMe.
Okay, so we'll put in a link for anybody who's interested. Say, listen, I like this initiative. I'd like to spend, commit a couple dollars or euros. Where can I do that to? We'll put in a IBAN or a bank account where we can do that. So that's kind of important. So I'm going to give credit to Nelly, our female superwoman on the team here. We did a little team discussion and we asked for questions from the background. I think you said something wonderful. And the wonderful thing, she said, Mark, we finally have a female. Not that we haven't tried to get females on the podcast before, and we'll work on getting more next year. One of the things we've been talking about the whole podcast is the value of standardization. One of the mistakes that we often have with standardization is we think there's one process that will solve all. And what Nelly just referred to is women are a big part of the population, right? Standardization is one thing, but differentiation within the standard is important, right? So as a woman representing also women homeless as homeless individuals, is there a different application of Med4Hope for women, or what are some of the classical considerations that have to be covered from a female perspective?
One first is that women can get pregnant.
Okay, so the pregnancy factor?
So the pregnancy factor is with migrants in Austria a huge problem, because the young Roma girls, they are like 20 years old and have their 5th pregnancy. Okay. And you have to talk to them alone, because when the man is with her in a consultation, they can't tell what they really think. They have a huge cultural issue with pregnancies and getting pregnant and getting children, even if the children won't stay here. They go down there to Romania or somewhere else, get the children, and they live in the streets, even the children alone. But the girls come back, or they kind of interrupt the pregnancy in the streets of Bucharest. So
having sensitivity to who's in the presence of the client.
Yeah,
this has a huge aspect. Yeah, maybe correlative, but not the same thing. Also with human trafficking, I remember you've had a couple issues where you suspected that the patient that you were treating was being trafficked, right?
Yeah. And female women, when they're living on the streets, they have to find somebody who protects them, and very often this person protects her but uses her. Yeah. So if she's not homeless, she has a home,
she's codependent or worse.
She is actually homeless, but she is allowed to live somewhere with a guy.
Oh, I remember you telling me there's some homeless people who will do couch surfing, if you want to call it that.
If you make a very statement, you could say, cynical statement, you could say that she knows who is going to rape, she's going to be raped when she lives with a guy in a home and in a park. She does not know.
It might not be non-consensual, but it might be what we call semi-consensual relationships with somebody because he's allowing them to live in their house.
What's for us important, if we have such a woman and she comes to our mobile team, and very often they come with an interpreter because they don't know the language. And usually I'm happy to have an interpreter because it makes the treatment more easier. But
although you do use software, right?
We have it. But if a woman comes with a guy, first I try to find a solution without him.
Yeah.
Only if I really feel that this woman needs the guy and she's really, he's a good guy.
One of the things you have to look out in your medical services is that you assess the situation to see, is there a potential
if there's
criminal
a guy
situation?
Who brings another two men, one brings in another, and he says, listen, this doctor, she helped me, maybe she can help you, and then we just talk. But if a man comes with a woman...
from a dominant position?
Yes, and I always ask him to wait outside. And even if the lady says, oh no, it's no problem, he can stay here, he's my boyfriend... And then I say, no, I'm the doctor. It would be better. Maybe, sir, please, could you wait outside? I'm very polite.
So part of your training program is also the sensibilization towards... yes.
Does she, when there's one woman...
So this is probably not classical medical training, but so you also learn things from other disciplines, like from social...
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
My patients in my office... in like Vienna, they never come with their husbands who protect them and go with them to the doctor. Like women like us, we come alone to our doctor, but they always, very often, these homeless women, they come with somebody, and you never know if he really protects her. Yeah. Or if he just uses her. And first of all, I want to talk to the woman alone.
You have the whole reproduction issue. You have the whole female hormone issue. And you have certain medical conditions that are probably specific to women. And you have the whole criminal human trafficking aspect that you have to be sensitive to as well.
I don't know if there are any studies, but to me, it seems that there are a huge part of schizophrenic women. Either they get that schizophrenic or they had it before.
So I was going to ask you more specifically, where do you find more mental health issues or more difficult or more egregious, more heavier mental health issues with females or with men?
With females.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah, the anxiety problem. If you sleep alone in the park and you're a guy, you might get raped, you might get attacked, you might get, there might be a robbery. But if you're a female, I could not think of sleeping in the park alone, actually. So that's another issue.
The female population, generally speaking, is just more vulnerable to the external.
Yeah.
And it might be a generalization, but maybe also that I find that generally speaking, that the female population might also be more emotionally sensitive, and I don't mean that as a negative quality. So they might be might not be as resilient to the conditions that they live in. Yes. Okay, good. Rico, the second part of our super team behind the camera, wanted us to double down on the roadmap because we also want to give, and there's a lot of positive things going on. So I want to kind of rephrase the question that I had from beforehand. If we're going to focus on 2025, 2024 and 2025, what is the roadmap of achievements that we're looking for? Number one, first version of the SM book, which will hopefully come out at the end of the year.
Yeah. And that we enlarge our team, our educational team.
So let's say that's my job here. Keep her in line here. Let's stick with one topic first. Would also be to start passing this MBOK, this street medicine BOK out to different countries and organization to see what kind of feedback we get and maybe to get them involved and maybe that they adopt it. So that would be the street medicine body of knowledge.
Yeah, but not really. to get the feedback and then maybe create a second book.
So that's what I meant, is to engage them and they say, hey, we want to participate, we want to be involved.
Yeah, but that's nonsense what you wrote here, and I think this is missing. And
so constructive, participative feedback, in the sense, just like the project management body of knowledge is also
it's work in progress.
It's a work in progress. It's revised every 5 years, and I think there's 500 volunteers that work on it from a PMI perspective. You want to maybe eventually get to a point where you have multiple countries, multiple organizations that are contributing, so you increase the quality and you create a international common language and process. Very good. So as far as your education program, you have a long list of candidates, of people that have been knocking on your doors who want to get training. Some that you've talked to and some that come to you. The first one that you've kind of mentioned are who are the people that you're thinking of?
What they do? Who do the training?
Yes.
Or?
Mm-hmm. In the next upcoming trainings.
We try to train doctors who did street medicine.
Okay, we've gone through that.
And
who
they
else?
should be trainers in our program.
Yeah. So, but who are the specific candidates of new candidates? You mentioned people who drive ambulances and
police,
paramedics. Why police?
Because they are mostly the first to arrive at the scene.
And all first responders, right? And police are often the first responders, and they're often, they might meet somebody who's non-respondent, and they don't know what to do with them, right?
Then they call the ambulance, then they have to be.
And I think what's also important, and because you mentioned that we had a terrible incident in Vienna that a couple homeless people died, right?
Yeah, they were murdered.
Well, not just because they were murdered, they died because they called the ambulance. The ambulance went away. They called the ambulance again. They went away.
But the ambulance did not go away because they did not want to treat the person, but because they had no idea how to create trust so that she comes with them.
So she didn't want. They have to ask people, "Will you come with us?" And if they say no, then they can't take them, right?
So they go.
But the bottom line is there was a couple incidences where these people died.
Yeah.
So you want to, for all first responders, which means ambulances, paramedics, police, fire departments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Training.
So all emergency services.
Yeah.
Hospitals, you have appointments with, right?
Yeah, we want to go directly to the hospitals, not only the doctors send over to our courses, but to go there and just tell them just what means to be homeless and then how to treat them and what is the difference. That's the topic. Also in our book and our education, everything, they are doctors.
It's not only about what do you do, but how do you deal with the situation.
What's different? Same, but different. Yeah. It's not, so you can make a mistake in the best sense of I'm a perfect doctor. Okay. I do it like I did it every time and it was always perfect. Okay. But now it's not adequate for this person.
And we've mentioned it a couple times, but something you're definitely doubling down on in the next couple of years is you have a good relationship to street workers, right?
Yeah.
But you're expanding on this. You have new organizations that are reaching out to you. There's new organizations that you're reaching out to, right? That you want to support and enable them to do rudimentary medical procedures is exaggerated. First aid, we want to call it?
Yeah, first aid for street.
So that if a street worker is in a predicament where they have a non-respondent or troubled patient, that they don't have to wait minutes or hours or whatever to do basic.
To call the ambulance or when not, and how to prepare when the ambulance arrives.
Also how to engage ambulances to let them know.
How to communicate with the ambulance. Because they are kind of enemies sometimes. Seems to me, at least.
Well, I think one of the issues that you have with it is that you have a patient that's either non-respondent or not willing to communicate, right? And then ambulances have the predicament that the hospitals don't want these patients.
Yeah, that's the next.
So they have to call in. Who's going to take it? Nobody wants to take them.
Even if they take them.
They're unfortunately, homeless people are often not clean. They're soiled, right? So, the ambulance staff realizes that if they take this patient, they're going to have to basically disinfect the vehicle afterwards. And these are all things that might be able to prevent, but it's a kind of resistance to say, listen, if we had a choice, we prefer not to take them.
Yeah,
which creates a problem, because sometimes, like we said beforehand, some patients get, you call 3 or 4 ambulances before somebody takes them.
The patient is afraid of the costs because they have no insurance, and they get really crazy bills from the hospital and the ambulances, like thousands of euros.
So that's kind of the value add that you can provide, is if you can provide a network of different people who interact with homeless people, the capability to take care of basic medical needs without it getting worse and worse and having to go to the hospital, you're actually doing a service also to the taxpayer, because they have less costs at the end of
I hope they realize that, actually. But it's part
of our public relations work.
Yeah, but you know what's new, and now that came just to my mind when you were talking, that we don't only connect what we are doing in street medicine, we connect with each other. All the NGOs are connected, and they meet and they exchange and they make symposiums and whatever. But they're in their own, like in Austria, we say they are swimming in their own soup.
Yeah.
They don't look at the other at those in the hospitals and the emergency units who treat these people not voluntarily, as I told you. So to get also connected and make an exchange.
Well, you're kind of a networker amongst the different organizations, which all are very you're getting great feedback from Caritas, from AmbaMed, from all these different. They really appreciate what you're doing. I think your biggest challenge is that you need to keep reminding them, hey, we're independent. We don't just serve one organization. We serve all.
Yeah. That's a very big issue.
Which I think is a very good positive principle. To be a servant to all, but a slave to none.
Our models, our projects are not with any. How did you say? I'm sorry. Wenn etwas nur speziell für eine Firma
das schneiden wir raus. Das
Danke, ja.
Exklusiv, oder?
Nein, ich meine, du hast vorher das gesagt.
Public
Domain?
Public Domain.
Das ist ja Public Domain, aber es ist nicht. Wie heißt denn das, wenn das ist immer so ein kleines R mit einem Ringel rundherum.
Copyright.
Registered.
Copyright oder so. Ja, okay, I don't know.
Ist wurscht, schneiden wir raus.
Also.
So, we have discussed a bunch of different topics. I hope this was a useful and helpful excursion into a new topic for my community. Monika, I want to say thank you for your passion and enthusiasm in your work, also in the charitable area. We wish you a lot of luck. The two of us will be continuing working for Med4Hope. You're the prime driver.
Thanks for the project management.
Yeah, for the project management cowboy in the background. Thanks a lot for your participation, and I'll see you next time.